welcome to the Bourbon Obsessed Bourbon Podcast for Monday, March 31st. I am Ed from BourbonObsessed.com, also known on Instagram as Bourbon_Obsessed. I publish a bi-weekly newsletter featuring the latest news and releases, and also do this podcast version for your listening pleasure. I am here again with my friend and bourbon aficionado, Dean Langdon. Dean, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Ed. People can find me on Instagram as Dean of Bourbon, and it's been a very obsessive bourbon week, so we have a lot to talk about today.
We do. And have you done anything interesting this week?
I had an interesting tasting with some friends this week that got to try some bottles that I'll never have myself, so it's always fun to do things like that. Some King of Kentucky, some Van Winkle 15-year-old, just some things that you can't find and I'm not willing to pay for. So that was a blast in the middle of the week.
Always nice to try those.
I bet you got to do some of that too.
I did. Well, I take advantage of Evergreen Liquor's Half-Price Wednesdays, where it's an excellent opportunity to try things like that because you can actually get them at reasonable prices. I actually did a lot of great bourbon events this week, which would occupy much of the podcast, but had a wonderful visit to Michter's. Went to Old Forester to try the new Bottled and Bond rye that we're going to talk about. Was that Potter Jane yesterday? Very
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, you've been all over the Commonwealth. So.
Yeah. Get around. All right, let's move on to the news. So there were because there's a lot to talk about this week. So
it was really busy, yeah.
Enough about us. So we'll start off with the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. They've announced that tickets for the 2025 festival will go on sale starting April 17, 2025, with early access for bourbon insiders on April 16th. The festival is scheduled to take place from September 5 to 7 in Bardstown, Kentucky. Various ticket tiers will be available, ranging from $190 for the 3-day bourbon taster passes to $6,995 for the new Ultimate VIP experience called the Oris President's Club. A Sunday-only pass will also be available for $105. VIP tickets tend to sell out extremely quickly, so you'll want to be a bourbon insider and purchase them on April 16th. Special session tickets also go on sale at that time as well.
Well, and my experience has been that those tickets do go very quickly. I've never gotten a VIP ticket. It's pretty easy, I believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but to become an insider, you just have to go to the Bourbon Festival website and sign up to be an insider. I don't believe there was a cost or anything else.
No, there's nothing. You just sign up for the mailing list, so there's honestly no reason not to be an insider.
You'll get a day's jump on everybody else, and there's only 24 of the President's Club's tickets, Ed. So, even at $7,000 a pop, my sense is those are going to go probably in half an hour or an hour, which is crazy.
I'm actually quite interested to see exactly what happens with that. So, so what that club's going to include? So you do get quite a bit. You get everything that VIP ticket holders get. You also get 3 nights at the brand new Trail Hotel that's being built, which is, being billed as a 4 or 5 star bourbon centric hotel. You get shuttle service from the hotel. Now that's definitely a nice thing.
It's a great package. I agree.
You get a Oris watch. I mean, that part was honestly, not that they're not nice watches, but I think, unless you really have a lot of money, once you're buying a watch in that price range, you're probably going to be picking it out yourself as opposed to getting one that's included in a package deal of some sort, as we both were.
I sit here and look at my beat-up Garmin watch. I'm going, okay, I can buy a lot of bourbon for $2,000. Do I really need a watch? But that will appeal to some people, and it will be interesting to see. I mean, I'd be astounded if that doesn't sell out. But it's just a pretty high price point, and I assume the festival is going to keep some portion of that. They've got to, and that's the whole idea, right, is to keep the festival growing and alive. So if they can make that work, more power to them.
Well, I mean, it's, to create more of the, curated type experiences that are becoming the thing these days. And the thing that's different about this, too, is you're not just getting tickets to the festival. It truly is a club. There's going to be like a fall and spring event, and I've heard some talk about what these special events for the club members are going to be, and they're going to be pretty nice. So, it's to sort of make you part of the festival year round, which I'll still be interested to see. That's quite a bit of money, but a lot of other things that are that expensive seem to sell out right and left.
That's right, and that's a nice touch that it extends to other festival, not so much events, but involvement with the whole thing. I like that idea. You can sort of a grassroots kind of thing, although it's a VIP grassroots.
But that's where it's going. I mean, I was thinking we would do a show about this, because there's just more and more of these. I mean, you forwarded me an email earlier this week, $12,500 to join a club.
Yeah. You get to get on a 14-year Willet barrel pick, but I don't know, 12.5 is a little steep for me anyway. That's a lot steep for me, let's be honest.
Well, but that's mid-tier pricing for those bourbon lore events that have been happening.
Right.
So, and then a lot of the distilleries are starting clubs that cost $2,000. So this is, I don't love the direction it's all going, but this is where it's going, and people will join things. So anyway, I'm interested to see how it goes.
We've got concierge medicine now. We're going to have concierge bourbon. It's just the way our society seems to be going.
Hey, let's not pick on doctors. We have concierge lawyers too.
Only the best for my legal clients. That's right.
So our next story is related. So the 2025 Kentucky Bourbon Festival Distillers Dinner will take place on April 30, 2025 at Savor at River House. Angel's Envy Master Distiller Owen Martin will guide guests through a tasting of Angel's Envy Triple Oak, the Kentucky Bourbon Festival Distillers Row Sherry Finished Single Barrel Pick, which I'm assuming they're referring to last year's, and I was actually on that pick, and that's actually a really good bourbon, so definitely worth it. The next one is the Angel's Envy 2024 Bourbon Cast. I don't know what they're referring to there. They must be referring to the cask strength bourbon, and it's just the limited release that comes out at the end of the year, and it must just be a typo. And then you also get a special mystery pour. The evening will also include a welcome cocktail featuring the official 2025 Kentucky Bourbon Festival recipe, a 4-course dinner by Chef John Vernice, and a dessert cocktail to conclude the event. Doors open at 5:15 p.m. and dinner starts at 6. Tickets are $150 per person, limited and non-refundable.
That looked like a really nice event, and you have to sort of drill down into the story, but it's the same day as the Great Steamboat Race in Louisville. Mm-hmm. And this restaurant's on the river, so I assume that you're going to get to see the steamboats battling it out on the mighty Ohio. Yeah, it's clearly intentional. And I don't know if you've ever seen the steamboat race before.
I haven't.
It sounds great. They're steamboats. It's not like Owensboro where you've got these cigarette boats racing. The steamboats move pretty slowly, and watching them try to turn around in the middle of the Ohio is awe-inspiring, but it's not quick. So you'll have time to savor all those pours at this dinner.
Well, it sounds good because there's actually quite a few of them and some cocktails. What I thought was interesting about this, though, in prior years they've kept this cocktail, the Kentucky Bourbon Festival cocktail, like this big secret that gets unveiled at this dinner. But I just saw online, Angel's Envy's posted a reel with people telling you how to make it already.
That's interesting.
So
yeah,
it's a little different this year because it's not being a huge secret.
Well, and if that spurs people to buy the tickets and to buy Angel's Envy to make the cocktail, that's what it's all about, right?
Yep. Right, this next story is sort of interesting, and you've got a few years on me, but I'm not sure you're quite up to competing with this one. It's Fireball Whiskey has announced a contest offering a lifetime supply of their product exclusively to individuals aged 90 and above. Eligible entrants or their nominator must submit their information and a photo enjoying Fireball on the contest website by March 31st, which is today, 2025. So if you're 90 or know somebody who's 90 and wants to enjoy Fireball for the remainder of their days, you want to rush to sign up.
I'm tempted to do this for my 94-year-old father who worked at Beam back in the day in the transportation department, but I don't think he would ever let me live it down. And it's not. It's just a contest. So I gather if I was Beam, I would say, look, if there's anybody over 90 who wants a lifetime supply of Fireball, I'm going to give it to them. But this is a contest. You've got to submit a photo with Fireball in it, and you've got to come up with a statement about like what mischief you get into when you're over 90.
But there were multiple winners, right? I think.
I couldn't tell from the
I think there's
release.
like 10 winners or something.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
And they're not. I suppose they're using the tables to determine life expectancy because none of these things can ever give away actual alcohol. But I thought the prize is like $10,000 or $14,000 or something like that. So to buy a lifetime supply of
Fireball, yeah. So it's a nice marketing pitch, right? I can't imagine that there's a huge market over 90, but. It'll appeal to some other folks. We've got sandwich generations where our generation has parents in their 90s, and so it'll give us something to talk about at Thanksgiving, right? Instead of politics and the weather.
It's pretty funny to win, but yeah, I mean it's definitely an interesting marketing campaign. And for our listeners, Fireball is made by Sazerac, not by Beam. As Dean said,
that's
so
true.
we don't want to leave you with the wrong information.
Right.
That's why I'm here. So next, the Mary Dowling Whiskey Company, an award-winning bourbon brand on a mission to restore the last legacy of Mary Dowling, announced the launch of a multi-city U.S. book tour for its new historical fiction novel, Mother of Bourbon, The Greatest American Whiskey Story Never Told. The tour will feature signings, tastings, and events across multiple cities, including Louisville, Chicago, and Detroit.
And I need you to educate me on this, Ed, because I don't really know anything about Mary Dowling. I may have to buy the book, but I'm hoping you can save me and tell me about it.
Well, first, what I thought was interesting about the book is it's billed as telling her story and the legacy, but it took me a number of times to read this thing over to get the historical fiction part out. So it's not a true historical biography. It sounds like it's a. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure why they're saying that, because I would have honestly thought it would have been nonfiction. Maybe I read that wrong, but I read it. I didn't notice it till I had looked at the press release a number of times, and then that part surprised me. I assume they're going to have as much factual information as they had. Yeah. Well, so no, Mary Dowling. I mean, long story short, because we want people to buy their book. Well, we don't. Right. It doesn't matter.
We're promoting the book. That's exactly
well, not
right.
Really.
Well, we promote all things bourbon, and the book is part of it.
Right, but we get no compensation whatsoever if people buy the book. But no, Mary Dowling was very clever. I mean, so she or her husband or both of them together owned a distillery, but then Prohibition rolled around, and she moved everything down to Mexico, and she produced bourbon in Mexico, and she was basically grandmothered in that. Her Mexico bourbon, that was the only bourbon. I mean, we hadn't defined it as the distinctive spirit at that point, but the only bourbon really that could be made outside the United States in Mexico. So and there's obviously a lot more to the story than that, but she was very wise.
Yeah, that's really, really smart, and kept the bourbon tradition going during Prohibition, which is excellent. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that book and reading it when it comes out about the middle of the month, it looks like.
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't know if I can make it to that book signing in Louisville, but I was thinking of trying to go to that because they're going to talk about it and give tastes of the whiskey. I don't know what it actually costs to go to it, but I don't think it was particularly expensive. So next, the James B. Beam Institute, which is 2 blocks from where we are, will be releasing Kentucky Wild Cask Bourbon this April. Students in the commercialization of distilled spirits class created a bourbon brand from start to finish. Their bourbon is a blend of 3 Kentucky straight bourbons, and it's overall bottled at 100 proof. It'll sell for $54.99 for a 750 milliliter bottle.
So this was really neat, I thought, because these students have sort of taken it from the ground up. They created the brand, they designed the label, they got legal approval for the label and all that. They visited distilleries. They're engaged in marketing and selling the bourbon. So I don't think there's any other program, college program, or maybe not even an industry program that takes you from the ground up for all those things. So it'll be interesting to see. I see there's only like 2,500 bottles, so I don't know what the demand will be. It's a good price point love to get a bottle and try it and see how these students did.
Yeah, no, I mean, it said they had noticed that there was nothing that really taught people the whole monetary. I mean, they teach the big picture monetary side, but not the monetary side and all the steps you go through from start to finish creating a brand and running a brand. And so they created this course, which, yeah, I suspect this. I mean, it's clearly stuff that people need to know. And
yeah, I mean, it sounds like it gives you a great overview of the different aspects of the industry. And if you want to get into the industry, just like anything else, you should learn all you can about it and then see where you want to start, So I also, the bourbons are interesting. That's 3 bourbon blend and an 8-year-old 13% rye that came from Freddie No, a 5-year-old 20% wheat, and then a 4.5-year-old 39% wheat. So those are some interesting, heavy on the wheat, clearly. There's going to be a little bit of rye in there from what Freddie No gave them. And it's roughly a third of each one of those. Not exactly, but anyway, it sounds like it should be really good. Can't wait to taste it.
Yeah, and they actually chose a pretty good price point, I think.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
So this next one's a semi-news story. It's just some updates about the Mellow Moments Club, which, for those who don't know, that's Four Roses Club, that it opens a few times a year. You can join. I'm led to believe in the past it had, before I think even lived here, had a lot more benefits to it than it does today. But you can go on barrel picks occasionally with Brent Elliott, and you can have the opportunity to buy bottles and a few other things. So on March 14th of this year, the first Mellow Moments Club private barrel selection of 2025 took place, where members hand-selected 3 exceptional barrels that will soon be available for purchase. The selected barrels include, and I'm only going to include this because people love the details about Four Roses. So one is a 9.2 year OESV TS37-6, so that's a 6th tier. D, 124.2 proof. The other's a 10.1 year OBSO SNSO6 P, 121.4 proof. A 10 year OESK FS58-4 I, 121.7 proof. So those are actually getting a little up there in proof, and they're mostly higher tiers, 4s and 6s, so people would probably be excited about that. But the thing that they're doing differently, so previously these bottles have been released where you would, they just say it's being released this day and people would go to the distillery. But now they're doing it to ensure fairness, they say. MMC is introducing a new random drawing process for members to purchase these exclusive releases. Starting in April, members can enter a drawing to purchase a single bottle, and if selected, will be invited to pick up their bottles at the Visitor Center in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. Additionally, the 2024 to 2025 Mellow Moments Bourbon Board has completed its final session, providing valuable feedback from a select group of members on member benefits, including private barrel selections, newsletters, and Facebook Live events. Applications for the 2025 to 2026 Bourbon Board will open soon. So those are some of the people that were apparently involved in this change. Yeah. So what do you think of this change?
That's an interesting structure. I don't know any other bourbon affinity clubs that use a board and have a board that cycles through the members, and that to me gives it a level of fairness and diversity that you may not otherwise get. And it also is somewhat limiting because if you've got to go to the distillery to get your bottle, that favors people here in our great Commonwealth of Kentucky, I think. And so,
well, but honestly, what's wrong with that? So say I want Stranahan Snowflake. I got to get my butt to Colorado the first week of December and camp out overnight to get it.
Right.
And most other distilleries do make you go there for their limited releases. I mean, that had started here with Four Roses for the LE, and for Birthday Bourbon, for Old Forester, they started doing these lotteries, opening it up to everybody, when previously, you would go to the distillery like normal. So I personally do not like that. I mean, because unless every other state wants to turn their things into these things where everybody across the country, at like Stranahan's again example, because I like the Snowflake, and there's many other distilleries out there that have limited releases, and they are not letting you get it this way.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, and this is, I like randomizing it because there's many more Mellow Moments Club members than there will ever be bottles, right, when you've got single barrels. So
they lasted quite a bit this last time. Weren't there like 5 or 7 barrels for the pick at the end of last year? They were there for a while.
I'm ashamed to say that I am not a Mellow Moments Club member, and I need to join.
You'll have to leave now.
It's been fun on the podcast, everybody. No, I'm envious. I mean, I know we have friends who have been in that club for years and years and have some amazing bottles to show for it. So I don't, I'm fine with it limiting it to a random group of people, and you randomize that. And I don't really have a problem, I guess, if you have to come to the distillery to get it, because to your point, so many other distilleries do that. Who's next?
Our last news story is the World Whiskies Awards 2025 has announced its global winners, recognizing excellence across various categories of whiskey. Several American whiskeys earned top honors, including, so I'm just going to say the Americans. There's obviously many more, and you can read about those on the website. But World's Best Bourbon was Old Fitzgerald, the 2024 VVS release. The World's Best Single Barrel Bourbon was Blanton Straight from the Barrel. The World's Best Small Batch Bourbon was Boulder Spirits 2024 Cask Strength Bourbon. The World's Best Finished Bourbon was Wenzel Sherry Finished. And, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows this, but it has to be an American winner to be World's Best Bourbon. So we sort of have those locked down to some degree to keep it within the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
So next is World's Best Corn Whiskey, which is Iron Root Republic, the Hubris Corn Whiskey. World's Best Tennessee Whiskey is Jack Daniel's Tennessee 12-year-old batch number 2. And then in addition to the whiskeys, several Americans and an American company were recognized in the Icons of Whiskey 2025 awards. They are the American Whiskey Brand Ambassador of the Year, that's Drew Mayville from Sazerac. The Sustainability Officer of the Year is Rachel Nally from Heaven Hill. The Innovation Manager of the Year is Ryan Gill from Three Chord Bourbon. And the Brand Innovator of the Year is Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Those are great accolades. I mean, World Whiskey Awards to me are some of the, they have more gravitas perhaps than some of the other awards that are given out. And I wanted to ask you about some of these that I'm not familiar with. So, for example, the Boulder Spirits Cask Strength. I'm not familiar with Boulder Spirits at all. Together, the whole small batch category is no small feat. Do you know anything about them at all?
No, they're in Boulder.
Yeah, well, so
no, I've heard of them and I've heard good things, but I've tried nothing from them.
Yeah,
and Wenzel I tried for the first time. They're pretty new at the KBF last year.
Are they in northern Kentucky?
Yes, as I remember it.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
But that's the only time I had tried there, so that's pretty good to be.
Yeah, they're relatively new, and to win a category at World Whiskey when you're a relatively new endeavor, I think is awesome. Speaks well about Kentucky and the talent pool we've got here, right?
So, well, and then you've had the Old Fitz VVS?
I've not had the VVS, no, but I mean, I can't remember ever having a bad Heaven Hill product, so I'm sure it's wonderful.
It is. I mean, it's actually it is really good.
I remember your review, frankly, and you were. It was a glowing review, so that speaks volumes because you're pretty honest about that. So
I try. And actually, that Iron Root, I think it's the 6th time that Hubris won the Corn Whiskey of the Year, and if memory serves me, they sort of alternate with. I think it's an Australian distillery.
That's interesting.
Other years that they haven't won, but the Hubris is really good. I have I don't know if that's barrel strength or whatever, but I have a barrel strength one that's really good.
We need to do a corn whiskey tasting. I've got a Spanish corn whiskey sitting around someplace, and it's like, okay, let's try corn whiskeys from different countries and see how they do it. So,
well, I like corn whiskey, so happy to do that anytime. All right, Dean. Before we start talking about the new releases, of which there are quite a few, let's talk a little bit and tell our listeners a little bit about what we're drinking here. So This is a old bottle of mine that Dean pulled off the shelf. I mean, not old like in vintage, although in Penelope years it is actually vintage. So this is the Penelope Bourbon, 4-grain barrel strength, straight bourbon whiskey, batch number 4, which was way back at the beginning. And this very easily could have been the first bottle of Penelope that I ever had. There's about maybe an inch and a half left in the bottle, so this is not long for this world. It's 116.6 proof, and I was telling Dean, I use the inert gas in my bottles because they tend to, I have quite a few of them, so they don't get emptied at a rapid rate. So once it gets down to like a third or a little lower, I use the inert gas, which I think keeps them intact for a long time. So this probably has lost a little alcohol. I'm sure it's changed a little bit over the course of, I'd be guessing, I can't remember when Penelope started, but this is at least 4 or 5 years, maybe more. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's changed a lot. It probably mellowed out a little bit. Not that I remember it ever being particularly not mellow, but
well, and it's. I mean, your listeners can't see it, but there's no etching on the bottle. It's a simple label with a capital P overlaid over a rose. It looks like to me, or a flower. It may not be a rose, but on the front and the back is just a simple print label, saying that it was distilled in Lawrenceburg and bottled in Bardstown, and it's. These barrels were aged more than 24 months, so no age statement on it. But it's as it's opened up, it's a very nice nose, really nice taste. You don't taste the 116 proof.
Not at all.
You're a better taster than I will ever be. So I'm going to let you sort of tell us what you're nosing and tasting on this one.
No, you can. We're tasting it together, so. And you picked it.
Well, and I picked it, so I get some. I get some oak on the nose. I get more and more, almost like I'm reminded of going to the barber shop, and after you're done, you get talcum powder, but it's also got sort of like an aftershave, which is a weird tasting or a nose note, but it's wonderful. It's got like Christmas spices mixed in with that on the nose. Get some honey on the taste. Again, a little bit of baking spices. A nice. You can taste the proof, but it's not overwhelming. And the finish, I think, it's nice. It's a lingering finish. It gets dry, but not astringent, if that makes any sense to folks.
Right, and I think we're pretty much on the same page. I get that. Well, I don't know about the aftershave, but I get the.
That's my marzipan going forward.
the other flavors. I get quite a bit of honey. It's got some nice light caramel. I agree. The finish it picks up a little bit more spice, but it still remains fairly mild, especially for 116.6 proof. It's got a pleasant warmth to it. It does get drier, but it's hardly like a puckering kind of dry or particularly tannic dry. It just turns a little drier, and it gives you that sort of drier wood taste as opposed to, that sort of overly powering, oak kind of thing. It's more like the sort of dry wood kind of thing at the end. But it's very nice. It's really easy to drink. It's actually quite enjoyable, and I'm sorry there's basically
just an inch left. Yeah. I know, right? I hear you, and I'm thankful to have had some of it before it got totally emptied. So we appreciate it. So we know this is MGP juice, and basically it's probably either a 36 or a 21% rye, if I remember my mash bills correctly. Do you have an opinion on?
Well, so they've always blended multiple mash bills.
You're right. Yeah,
what they've done from the beginning. Yeah, so it's got a combination of the rye mash bill and the wheated, and Penelope was unique from the start. I mean, they started doing that, which I think creates a very pleasant and drinkable bourbon. I mean, this is very different than things like the Architect series and stuff, but they're very good. I mean,
they did it well enough so that MGP bought them. So it's hard to. That's a resounding endorsement. when the bourbon you're buying, you create it, you craft it, you grow it, and the distiller buys you back. So and keeps you on board, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the principals are still working and doing great things there at Penelope. So,
Well, we've been talking about it so much that I finished my glass, so now we'll have to take a very brief refilling break. All right, Dina, you ready to dive into this fairly lengthy list of new releases?
We've been talking about how things are contracting, but you wouldn't know it from the number of new releases this weekend. So, let's dig right into it.
Definitely wouldn't know it. All right, so we'll start off with Old Forester has released the newest in the 117 series expression. It's Bottled in Bond Rye. This rye whiskey was distilled during the spring season of 2015 and bottled in 2025, making it just about 10 years old. Following the strict guidelines of the Bottled in Bond Act, Old Forester's first Bottled in Bond rye is bottled at 100 proof and produced at a single distillery in one distilling season. The suggested retail price is $64.99 for a 375 milliliter bottle.
So the regular Old Forester rye is one of the best bargains out there. It's 100 proof. It's not 10 years old, but it's the same mash bill, if I understand it correctly, which is 65 rye, 20 barley, 15 corn. And if you've tried this, I haven't tried this yet, but I just wonder, is the price differential worth it because it's such a good bourbon, or excuse me, such a good rye anyway, and it's like $25 for a 750. So,
well, I mean, so this sort of falls into a category similar to some of the other things we had talked about on prior episodes. So you see the $64.99 for a 375 milliliter bottle, but then you see that it's a 10-year-old rye from Old Forester. And who out there has had a 10-year-old rye from Old Forester? That is not something that you really see. So suddenly, it becomes, 65, so 130 for a 750 milliliter equivalent. Does not seem all that high for something that nobody's ever really had. So from a price perspective, even though that puts it on the higher side, I think that's, it's got the uniqueness character to it. Now the flavor, so I mean, I tried them side by side. Is it, so this is probably 4 to 5 times the price of the...
Our listeners aren't going to be able to get a bottle, so you can be honest about it.
No, I thought it's good. I mean, so, it's got more of the age characteristics to it. It mellows down some of those sweeter, fruitier flavors of the 4-year-old, because that's basically a 4-year-old rye. But, it's a matter of preference. I mean, most people in the group really liked it. In fact, everybody, I think, really liked it. So,
and I think the standard 4-year-old is good. So it's I'd be very surprised if it wasn't better, with the extra age on it. And you see other what comes to mind, for example, is the Basil Hayden 10-year-old, right? And they sell that at a premium as opposed to the regular Basil Hayden. That's right. I mean, age is money in the bourbon world, and I don't know that it's unreasonably priced. I think it's an interesting take. You're right. Where else are you going to find a 10-year-old Old Forester rye? You're not.
No, I've never had one or seen one. I mean, maybe other people have, but they're certainly not common if they even exist. And, like a lot of these distilleries, Old Forester did not make a lot of rye. When they first came out with that 100 proof rye at its, I think it was like $22 or something.
It was
when
a
first
great
came
deal.
out.
Yeah, I want to say it was a liter bottle.
But they couldn't keep up. They were struggling to keep up. So they've increased their rye capacity. So they can't possibly have that much old rye sitting around because they couldn't get the younger stuff out. So,
yeah.
I don't know. Got a uniqueness factor. It's definitely a good whiskey. If you have the opportunity to buy a bottle, and if it follows the other 117 series, I think for the next few weeks, if you took a tour at Old Forester, I would suspect you might have the opportunity to buy it at the end of the tour. So, they're not completely out of reach. I mean, we're getting into pretty peak tourist season, so a lot of people will be coming here and have the opportunity.
That's right. We're about a month away from the Derby, and it gets really busy this time of year. But that's a good point because Old Forester is a nice tour, beautiful facility, and all sorts of good things about Old Forester there in Louisville.
But it's already it is noticeably significantly busier in Bardstown now than it was before I went to the New Orleans Bourbon Festival. Which is, a lot has happened in just a couple weeks. And Keeneland starts on Friday, so
exactly
there will be a whole bunch of people, and that's before the Derby. So
yeah,
we're
be
here.
a lot of bourbon drinking going on in the Commonwealth the next 60 days.
But a lot of distillery visiting, so
that's right.
You won't be alone if you go. Right, so next, Maker's Mark has unveiled the Keepers release, the latest addition to its wood finishing series. This limited edition bourbon honors the distillery's warehouse team and is bottled at 109.2 proof. It should be available at U.S. retailers now with a suggested retail price of $74.99.
And they always do a good job on these wood finishing series. People may wonder what the warehouse team does. Well, I mean, Maker's Mark is one of the few distilleries that still rotates barrels, and they have humans actually rotating barrels in their warehouses. That can't be easy work, and so I think it's appropriate.
Well, tell them what rotating is, because some people think it's not rolling them side to side.
They will move barrels from lower in the warehouse to higher in the warehouse, and because they age differently. There's more evaporation. The higher up you go, the higher the temperature. All these good things that are wonderful. That's what makes bourbon so wonderful, is the way science and chemistry work on bourbon. But yeah, there's people physically doing that, and I think it's wonderful that they are doing something to recognize that. You've got to feel a little bit unappreciated when you're moving huge barrels around from higher to lower and back and forth. And so good for makers.
Well, the whole point of these series is to sort of honor and sort of share the smells and flavors of the different parts of the people that all the people that go into making Maker's Mark. Because the first one was the Heart release, and then now this one is this one. So it's based on trying to recreate the smells and tastes that they would. I mean, they're not tasting things, but the smell. You know what I mean? The smells and tastes of what they experience on a day-to-day basis in the warehouse. And I don't know what the next one in the series is going to be, but that's sort of the premise of these, and that's where those names come from and where this flavor profile comes from.
That's really neat. I did not know that. So, who's up next?
Well, next is Buzzard's Roost. They have unveiled Signature Double Oak Bourbon. It's a new bourbon in their lineup that fully expresses the proprietary double oak style for which the brand is known, and it's priced to appeal to all whiskey lovers. After spending years maturing in new American white oak barrels, the new Buzzard's Roost Signature Double Oak Bourbon is finished in proprietary casks that were lightly charred and precision toasted for optimum flavor extraction. Bottled at 100 proof, Signature Double Oak Bourbon is priced at $45, suggested retail price, and will be available nationally. The first bottles will be released on April 17 at the Buzzard's Roost Whiskey Row Distillery and Tasting Room.
And I saw, I mean, I'm a big Buzzard's Roost fan. I like what they're doing.
Hard to say, though.
It is hard to say Buzzard's Roost, especially 3 times in a row. So this is MGP's, I believe, 7521 for mash bill. And I think I read that they are using their own casks for the second aging, for the double oak part. And so good
it was
for
honestly
them,
a little confusing.
Mm-hmm. It was. I mean, so I don't know. I couldn't tell. Are they?
Because that would be used
toasting them again after they empty them? That doesn't make sense to me. But,
yeah, I don't know.
So we're going to have to go visit Ed and flesh this out. Is what we're going to have to do.
So. But I mean, but this bourbon exemplifies sort of what we had discussed on previous episodes about how the prices decrease, or they may not be decreasing, but distilleries are releasing things at the below $50 price point. Now, all the other Buzzard's Roosts have been priced higher than this by at least 20, 25 plus.
They're the $70 to $100 plus range. So
now we're at 45.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the trend.
Yeah, exactly. And Buzzard's Roost struck me like, we've been talking about Penelope a little bit. Say Penelope 3 times real fast. Mm-hmm. But I could see Luxco or MGP buying back Buzzard's Roost at some point, and they're keeping on growing it, and things like this. The broader the product mix you get, I mean, it's all MGP juice that Buzzard's Roost is using, and so if you can.
Well, I'm not sure that's because they're just. I'm pretty sure
Are
they're
they doing
distilling
their
at
own?
Green River. Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. See, I didn't know that. That's why I have you on this podcast.
But I don't know if any of that's old enough to go into anything yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like it. I like what Buzzard's Roost does as well. I'm interested to taste this, and I love the price point. I love these under $50 things. I mean, it's being responsive to the consumers, and
right. There's a much bigger market at 50 and under than 75 and above. Let's be honest. Just a much bigger tranche of people that are willing to give it a shot. So.
All right, so our next bourbon is from Beam. They announced the first Booker's Bourbon of 2025. It's called Barry's Batch, and it honors Barry Barish, the former Beam chairman and CEO. Barry's Batch is an uncut, yet another not easy thing to say, uncut, unfiltered bourbon that has been aged for 7 years, 2 months, and 4 days. It's bottled at 125.7 proof, made of barrels from 4 production dates that were aged in 5 different warehouses. The suggested retail price is $99.99, which is standard Booker's price these days, for a 750 milliliter bottle. And I always find their age thing, confusing. 7 years, 2 months, 4 days is going to be the youngest thing that's in there because it says right here it's 4 production dates, so there obviously can't all be 4 days. But by law, it has to be the youngest whiskey in there on the label.
And they're the only distillery I know of that actually gives you how many days, right? I mean, I'm used to seeing years, and some people will do years and months, but, that's sort of a Beam signature for the Booker's product. I don't think they do it for any others. And
the Hardin's Creek, they put the age in months.
Okay.
Which was like an old school practice back in the day when people didn't like aged whiskey, so you made it seem like it was less old by saying that it was 180 months.
And this reminds me a little bit of Bardstown Bourbon Company, who is really specific about the percentage of which, of each blend or each bourbon that they're putting into their blends and things like that. I don't think Beam does percentages here, but they're giving you age and which warehouse each bourbon was in, and a lot of information that if you're a Beam geek, you can make something of that. And I don't know enough to know, but I have yet to have a Booker's I didn't like.
No, I think Booker's is always really good, but yeah, I mean, there's people that are, very obsessed with the Booker's line, and that all that information is nice. I mean, any transparency I appreciate.
Exactly. Yeah. And the first Booker's I bought was $60, and so I miss those days. Wow. Not to date me, but it was a while ago.
It wasn't that long ago, because remember they were that ballpark price, and then like overnight they said it was going to go up to $100, and then there was like a huge outrage. So then over a 4-year period, it's gradually crept up to that $100 price point that they wanted it to be at.
That's right. Yeah.
Which honestly, I mean, in this day and age, I mean, for a 7-year 125 proof, 100 is probably about the max of what it should be.
Yeah, no, it's one of the better priced products out there, in my opinion, for what you're getting. They do a masterful job of creating this product, and for whatever it's worth, you're getting a nice wood box, you're getting all these other nice things, and it's a perfect bourbon for sipping in the summer on the porch. So
yeah, we'll even have the rocking chair batch, right? And front porch. And
they do. Yes, they do. Yeah, that's right. So, unintentional allusions there, but it works.
No, I think they're actually intentional.
They were unintentional on my part, anyway. Yes. So.
All right, next we have New Riff. They've announced the release of the 2025 editions of Silver Grove Bourbon and Rye. Silver Grove Bourbon is bottled at 110.3 proof, aged 4 years, and priced at $55.99. Silver Grove Rye is bottled at 110.2 proof, aged 5 years, and also priced at $55.99. Both will be available exclusively through New Riff's gift shop, starting at 11 a.m. Friday, April 4th, Keeneland opening day, this Friday. A percentage of proceeds from Silver Grove sales support the Silver Grove Community Foundation, which funds community-led projects to enhance the city's quality of life.
I love New Riff products, and their price point is, I think, unique in the industry. I mean, you get single barrels from them around this $55 price point. These aren't single barrels, but they exemplify their product. I mean, the rye is a 95.5, mash bill, just your classic rye, and I don't know. I'm just out of the. I don't know if we can even call New Riff a craft distiller anymore, but they have had wonderful steady growth, and they've got a place in the market that they've just carved out in a very thoughtful, orderly fashion.
If memory serves me, I was trying to remember. So this is only the second year of these, and the first, and they were the first small batch barrel strength bourbons from New Riff, because everything else that wasn't a single barrel
was bottled
in bond.
Yeah, right.
So it has that, and Silver Grove is named after, I believe, where they have been building warehouses. So that's their attachment to that. It's also a historic bourbon brand. So there's that. But I believe that the first rye had 30% malted rye in it. Now this one doesn't say it, but I'm wondering if it does.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, it's I have no idea, and I don't think I'm going to make it up there on April 4th, but I think you can order it online and go pick it up, if I remember correctly. So to our discussion earlier about, do you have to be at the distillery on that day and camp out overnight? New Riff, I think, is not so much into that, and I believe you can order online. You're going to have to go get it, but you don't have to go wait in line. So.
And I don't know if they're doing anything special this time, but usually New Riff is actually pretty nice if you go out there the weekend that it's released, because they'll have like some sort of inexpensive food thing going on with it, and you'll get like pours at significantly cheaper than they would normally be, so you get to try it out. So I don't remember actually seeing it for this particular release, but maybe.
Yeah, I don't remember if there's going to be an event, if you will, but I mean. If I had more free time, I would drive up just to go to their Aquifer bar up there, and they've got an amazing breadth of New Riff product behind the bar.
Everything. They have
everything. Yeah, they do. And so
because I had the peated bourbon the last time I was up there, which I actually really like.
Well, and I think I had their I forget the name of their release that was commemorating 8 years, 10 years. They've been around 10 years. It was their 10th year, had a psychedelic label on it.
Yeah,
and so
I've
forth.
had that too. And the thing is, their tasting bar does not have crazy prices for this older releases, which is what's crazy. You can go up there and you can try the stuff from history, the things that were only available to people that were fast enough online. Yeah, and now you can try it at a price that's quite fair for something that you'll never. Isn't made again. There's no way you're going to get a bottle.
And the bartenders are knowledgeable. They're, like any bartender. Well, hopefully all bartenders are friendly. But they know all about the product. It's just a great experience. You get a view of across the river into Cincinnati. Overall, it's a great experience. Love going up there. So.
Again, we received nothing.
That's right. No, New Riff has not given us anything for this. It's just a fun thing to do.
But it is. I do like the place, and I'm a big fan of their bourbons as well. Mm-hmm. So next we have Jim Beam again. They've unveiled the Jim Beam Pineapple. This new expression blends the bold flavor of pineapple with signature smooth Kentucky straight bourbon, a fresh and flavorful take that adds a tropical piña twist to classic Southern traditions. Jim Beam Pineapple is Beam's first new flavored spirit in 4 years. It is bottled at 65 proof and has an SRP of $19.99 for a 750 milliliter bottle. Dean, were you looking to add some tropical piña twist to your classic Southern traditions?
I just, this is the kind of thing where if I was a freshman in college and not old enough to drink, this is the kind of thing I'd try and get my older compatriots to buy, right? And again, I love Jim Beam products, bourbon products. I don't consider this in that lineup, but there's a market for it, clearly. And I went and looked up their other flavored products, and so they have apple, they have honey, they have peach, they have vanilla. They have they have Kentucky Fire, and they have Red Stag. Do you know what Red Stag is? I see. I've stumped Ed on bourbon.
I've seen it. I don't know. It's not another cinnamon one.
No,
is it?
it's a black cherry flavored.
Why is it called Red Stag?
I have no idea, but I can see.
Well, I'm not flavored bourbon obsessed.
Point taken. Point taken. So I can just see feeling really bad the next day going through a sampling of Beam flavored whiskeys. And I'm sorry, but
I don't see that happening.
I know there's a place for it. There's going to be a market for this. You can't beat the price point, right? For $20, it's like, okay, people out there will try this. It's not in my wheelhouse. Sorry.
No, but people do like flavored things. And floating around here somewhere, there's like the vanilla. There's some of them because I was just given like little... It was like at a liquor store in North Carolina where, I don't know, they were coming with the bottles of products.
Right.
Do you want to try this?
Sure. Anyway, good on them. Look for it at your favorite liquor store, and if you're in that market, buy a couple.
When you're in there picking up the latest Booker's Berries batch, you can grab some Beam.
They should, at least they don't make you. Hopefully, they don't make the retailers buy a case of pineapple to get a case of Booker's. Right? That's not a good marketing tool.
No. Well, I mean, technically, the distillery can't do that.
They
that
can't.
would have to be the distributor.
The distributor does that.
But,
right.
Not that we're saying that the distributor is doing that, because that would be a whole other issue.
We don't want to get in trouble with the distributors.
We're just saying the distillery does not control how things are sold or priced, for that
exactly
matter. That's why it says suggested retail price. So next is two more from the World Whiskey Society. This time they've partnered with Ducks Unlimited to introduce two limited edition whiskeys. The Ducks Unlimited Special Edition 10-year-old Kentucky Bourbon and the Ducks Unlimited Shotgun Shell American Single Malt. The bourbon comes in a Ducks Unlimited inspired bottle, which is packaged in a wooden box resembling an antique hunting rifle case, and a really cool looking bottle too, with like a duck stopper. Mm-hmm. The American Single Malt comes in a red fluted glass bottle resembling a shotgun shell and is packaged in a gun barrel inspired metal tube case. The bourbon is bottled at 104 proof and priced at $2.99, and the American Single Malt is bottled at 96 proof and priced at $119.
These are visually interesting. There's no information about the whiskey that I could find on the website at all. Obviously, we know that the bourbon is 10 years old, but I don't even think... Well, it did say it was a Kentucky bourbon, so I know it's a 10-year-old Kentucky bourbon.
Oh, that's right. This one did say Kentucky.
This one did say Kentucky.
Because the last one I got clarification on that we talked about the last Kenner, and that's from... I can't remember the name of the distillery, but it's from Oklahoma distillery, that other 10-year that was in the nice decanter.
Yeah.
I can find it here maybe.
And these remind me of the Beam decanter series kind of things. I mean, I'm sure the bourbon is fine, but you're not buying this for the bourbon. You're buying this, A, to support Ducks Unlimited, which is fine, or B, because you really love the design. And they are unique designs. I mean, the bottle stopper on the 10-year was beautiful. It's a work of art. And so, again, it's a marketing niche. I don't know that they'll get the bourbon geeks on these products, but I love a pretty bottle just like anybody else, and these are beautiful.
So the last one, just as a follow-up, now I don't remember what the packaging was, but it was a similar thing. It was it was that pistol decanter,
yeah, it was a pistol
which was also really cool. So that was from the Scissortail Distillery in Moore, Oklahoma, and I tried to look into that distillery and really couldn't find much of anything recent. So I would guess that it's no longer exists, and the World Whiskey Society must have bought a bunch of their aged
some of the inventory. There you go.
Yeah. But I mean, in this case, exactly, the tenure is Kentucky, so we don't know where that came from. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they keep putting these out. I suppose there's, I don't know, $299 for decorative.
It's a conversation starter, and it's an expensive conversation starter, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. So. I don't know. I know when people come over here and they look at bottles, they don't choose them based on what their shape is. They choose them what they want to drink based on what it is.
The people coming over here, Ed, and looking at your bottles are looking at the labels and reading the labels and usually, pick based on that. So, but there's all sorts of different markets out there, right? I mean, there are people who, if I was a big Ducks Unlimited supporter, I'd buy this American Single Malt at 120 because it is a cool bottle. And
It's a very cool bottle.
yeah, I mean, American Single Malts, I'd like to try it and see.
If I
just
had
how
any
good it
shelf
is.
space where anybody could actually see it.
So all the Patreon folks out there, donate so Ed can buy more shelf space. Okay?
Another house. Yet another house. So this next one is from a distillery that I was not familiar with, and these are their first releases. Veritable Distillery, a Connecticut-based spirits company dedicated to crafting authentic, premium, historically inspired spirits, proudly unveils its first two expressions, Ship's Bell Bourbon and Southwick's American Gin. Veritable Distillery is committed to sustainability, ethical production, and transparency. Ship's Bell Bourbon is an authentic blend developed in collaboration with the renowned Bardstown Distillery. Now, I have a email into them because I live in Bardstown half the time, and I am not familiar with the Bardstown Distillery, so I'm thinking they mean Bardstown Bourbon Company. But it says it in the press release and on their website, so we need clarification of what exactly that is. It's aged for 3 years in New American White Oak casks. The bourbon is then blended with the Veritable American Single Malt Whiskey, which is crafted from 100% malted barley, which it would have to be, and aged for 3 years in ex-rye casks from, again, they say, the Bardstown Distillery. The mash bill, which I'm assuming is referring to the bourbon component, since the other is 100% rye, and this isn't the combined component, which like barrel bourbon, would do,
Right.
of what the mix is. So it's 73% corn, 21% rye, and 6% malted barley. And the bourbon is bottled at 86 proof. Ship's Bell Bourbon is available online and at select retailers in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New York for an SRP of $24.99.
And so it's interesting because I love the fact about the transparency, but let's talk about accuracy, because if you're blending a bourbon and a single malt, it's not a bourbon, it's a whiskey. And so I have a little bit of an issue there. It's hard to argue about a $25 price point. I too was curious when I saw Bardstown Distillery. It's like, well, what exactly is that? There's a lot of distilleries in Bardstown.
Well, but they used it as a proper name, so
Right.
it could only. I was thinking, do they mean Barton or do they mean? But I mean, if they're gonna get something at 3 years, I'm assuming. I mean, Bardstown Bourbon Company would seem to be the more likely collaboration. But
yeah, I mean, they do. Bardstown Bourbon, as we know, distills for a lot of different brands, and they will store and they will bottle for you. And so, I mean, they're at all in one. You can create a bourbon without having to build a distillery, and Bardstown Bourbon will help you with that. So that would be my guess. But I'm glad you asked them, and on the next podcast, we'll inform everybody if you get a response.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll get. People are usually very good at answering these questions, actually. So next is Lux Row Distillers has introduced Lux Row Small Batch Albarino Cask Finished Bourbon. It's the latest addition to the growing line of Lux Row bourbons. It is an, quote, expert blend of 4-year-old wheated and rye bourbons finished for an additional 6 months in casks that held Albarino wine, a dry white wine known for its citrus flavors, acidity, and hint of salinity. Bottled at 105 proof, this release should be available now at the Lux Row Distillers gift shop. And I actually meant to stop in there to see if that was the case. The suggested retail price is $59.99 for a 750 milliliter bottle.
And interesting finish. I've not heard of Albarino wine. I probably wouldn't. I'm not a wine drinker, and if I do drink wine, it's red, not
so
white.
Can I take the locks off of this?
yeah. And so, I know it's a limited release. I don't expect them to add this to their portfolio over and over again, and so I think there's some value there. The price point's not terribly bad. I don't know. Do you remember, is it just at the distillery, or will there be any distribution on this? Do you know?
It didn't say, so
okay.
I don't know. I mean, because everything in that line except for the 4-grain was supposed to be distillery only. I mean, the one before this was that sherry cask that came out
right
the end of last year. And it's definitely at the distillery. I don't know. I don't think I've seen it in stores. So this may just be there. I don't know. I mean, I like what Lux Row does, but this line of the Lux Row label things has always been a bit confusing to me because it first came out with the double barrel, which is the
two
most
single
confusing
barrels.
name ever.
Two single barrels, but it's a double barrel, right?
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, so it's two single barrels added together, so it's not lying. I mean, it's but most people think double barrel is you take it in one barrel and
put it into
finish
a second
another.
one.
So
Right.
I think a lot of people were confused. But don't get me wrong, that stuff's fantastic. So it's minimum age of 12 years. I think I've had them up to 15 years. They're all age stated at 12, but they can obviously be older. Really good bourbon and fairly high price point. It came out at like $139. I don't know what it is now, but it's higher. But it's not crazy for what it is, and it's really good. It's definitely worth picking up a bottle if you have the opportunity. But then they came out with the 4-grain, which is packaged almost identically. So I suspect a lot of people grabbed that thinking they were getting the double barrel at like a phenomenal price, only to find out that they weren't. Now, not that it's bad, but it's not the double barrel. It's not the
double barrel. And
which is fantastic. Right. And so then the sherry one came out, also packaged that same way, and now this one is as well. So the line all looks exactly the same, but they're vastly different bourbons in it.
And there's Luxco and MGP and Ross and Square, but whichever name they're using this week, they're labeling. I mean, I'm thinking of the Remus products, and at least those are in different shaped bottles. But they don't do enough, in my humble opinion, to distinguish their branding. So Luxco has a distinctive bottle shape. On Blood Oath, they use different color labels. They should be doing something like that on these limited series too, and that would let people distinguish them a little bit better. I'm an attorney, not a marketer, but so for whatever it's worth, there's my thoughts, Lux Row.
No, I thought that the second the 4-grain came out, it's like, this looks way too much like the double barrel, and people are going to be jumping all over it thinking they can finally get a double barrel, because they're not that easy to get. You can't get them at the distillery most of the time.
I think I got mine at the Bourbon Festival. Yeah, so it's not easy to find.
Well, I picked up a few during COVID, because that's when I went out there when it was first released, which was, I don't even remember when, because it was supposed to be a one-shot thing, which it clearly wasn't, because that was 4 years ago. But it was supposed to always be distillery only. But during COVID, when nobody was going to distilleries, it started showing up in like Liquor Barn and stuff.
Right.
So we picked up a bunch of them then, because why not?
I wonder, I think I got a Liquor Barn one too. I wonder if they'll let people do picks of those, where they would pick the two barrels. That would be an interesting concept.
I hadn't heard of that.
That's a nice twist, though. I mean, there's a tourism single barrel aspect. Get liquor stores to come in there and pick two barrels, and we're going to put them together into.
Well, that's what Woodford does.
Yeah, does do they? Huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
So you get, a 2-barrel blend nowadays, but yeah. So
unless they've trademarked that, Lux Row could do it too.
So next we have another one from Lux Row, and Dean's stealing my thunder, because this is the release of Blood Oath Pact 11. So it's a unique blend that continues the series tradition of blending well-aged Kentucky straight bourbons with innovative finishes. This year's, it says secret blend, except I guess we know what it is, features a union of 2 well-bred bourbons, a 14-year ride and a 10-year wheated bourbon, blended with an impressive 7-year ride bourbon, finished in barrels that held añejo tequila. Bottled at 98.6, as they all are, body temperature. This release will be available for in-person purchase starting at 9:30 a.m. on April 26th at Lux Row Distillers in Bardstown at a suggested retail price of $129.99 for a 750 milliliter bottle. It will then be available at retailers.
I like what Lux Row does with Blood Oath. I think that's sort of John Rempe's signature in my brain anyway, and they keep, this one's going to have 51,000 bottles, so
they're always big releases.
Yeah, it's hard to call it a limited release, but they're only going to do it once. He comes up with a unique blend like this, and I think he's masterful at that. I just wish I had more of them at home.
I have a couple, but he's but no, I really like how John Rempe blends and finishes, because it's not clear when you're just reading this, but he only finishes one of the bourbons in each of these 3 bourbon blends. So the bourbon finishes are always very subtle. And the one that he finishes is always the youngest of the bourbons, so that he's not messing with the 14-year that's in there.
I did not realize that. Huh?
Because of that, it's always a very complimentary and subtle finish. They're all the Blood Oaths. It's a complimentary. It's not like, oh, I'm drinking tequila and here's a little bourbon in it.
Right.
I haven't tried this, but I'm sure it's going to be a very complimentary and subtle tequila flavor. And I'm pretty sure that tequila was aged in Lux Row barrels,
casks,
before, and then came back.
Mm-hmm.
But no, because I'm not a huge, I do not like an overpowering finish. I like a subtle finish, and John Rempe does for those you don't know, he's the master distiller, has it does I think a phenomenal job with that.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm not a finished bourbon aficionado, but when it's done right, when it's just a subtle taste, and I'm not a tequila aficionado either, but I love the
fact that there's one more luck I can take off.
I love the fact that people are finishing bourbons, and I'm reminded strangely of a beer I had in California 30 years ago, which had a blueberry finish, and I'm going, that's going to be horrible, but it was so subtle and gentle that it was magnificent. And I think you can do the same thing with a bourbon. And not to take anything away from Beam, but I don't think it's going to be the Beam Pineapple.
No. But, I mean, I happen to have here, which is... Sorry, pretty sure you can't buy this anymore.
So listeners, you can't see this, but Ed just opened a cabinet and pulled out a bottle from the recesses.
Also probably can't buy it, because these come out very rarely. I think they've done it once, maybe twice from Balcones, but it's their Big Baby Bottled in Bond straight corn whiskey matured in tequila casks.
Ah.
And, well, since we have empty glasses, it's it's really good. Not to steal the Blood Oath thunder, but I was sitting right by this bottle, so I figured we should have a little.
And so that clink of glass you all heard was just a little bit of brown water going into the glasses, and
of course, we know it has to rest in a Glencairn for 15 minutes.
So there'll be a 15-minute break of silence, and you'll just hit pause, and we'll be back. Okay.
We'll talk. We'll give it a few minutes, and we'll talk about it after our last one. So our last one is always a winner too. I have not tried this year's release, but I've certainly tried ones in the past, and it's fantastic bourbon. So Michter's has announced the release of their 2025 10-year Kentucky Straight Bourbon. Michter's master distiller Dan McKee and Michter's Master of Maturation, Andrea Wilson, have approved the release of Michter's 10-year bourbon that will begin reaching stores, bars, and restaurants this April. And in quotes, rather than on a strict age schedule, at Michter's, we bottle whiskey when our production team deems it fully matured. This continues the standard set by Michter's first Kentucky Master Distiller, Willie Pratt, said Michter's president, Joseph J. Magliocco. And so that's true. So when they say 10 years, they could be anything above that. And they have had many years above that at sometimes. And there's been years they haven't released it because it hasn't met
they didn't like it.
Their criteria. So which explains why it's always fantastic. So this year's release is bottled at 94.4 proof for a suggested retail price of $195 for a 75 milliliter bottle.
And this is sort of one of the reasons in my brain why Michter's is considered one of the most revered bourbons worldwide for 2 years running now, right? I mean, they do such a great job of not just putting stuff out for the sake of putting it out. They are very thoughtful about it. I heard Andrea Wilson speak this week. I went to a presentation in Louisville on Monday called Bourbonomics, and they had Andrea Wilson and Jane Bowie and Eric Gregory and a gentleman from Bro Brothers Distillery on a panel talking about the economics of the bourbon industry. And as you might expect for that panel, it wasn't doom and gloom. It was like there's all these things going on and it's all good, and in particular tourism is a big thing. Michter's has just sort of hit a home run on their bourbon, on their tourism. They're an amazing engine, and I really admire what they're doing.
Yeah, no. Well, also in this cabinet is a wide selection of Michters, including prior 10 years. Yes, I'm a very big fan myself, and it is a great place to visit. The cocktail bar is beautiful there, and we were just there the other day and really enjoyed it.
And they don't have a 15-year-old. So, the Michter's 10 is probably anything from 10 to
well, it was
18,
a 15
19.
a couple of years ago.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Okay, see? Yeah.
And then I think I don't know all the ages of them. I mean, they don't say the specifics, but
Right.
but
They
definitely get up
We know
there.
they put out a 20, which is, again, not every year. Pretty irregularly, but it's only when it merits it.
Yeah.
So.
But right, so since they wait for the 10s to be ready, they're often significantly older than 10, although they're still labeled 10 because that's its name.
Well, that's right. Exactly. And that's the minimum, right? Anytime you see a 10-year, that's a minimum. And so.
But I'm pretty sure they're single barrels. Yeah. Single barrel.
Yeah, okay.
So
great. So
I don't know if they actually vary in age between the bottles then in the batches, but I guess that'll be a question I'll ask the next time.
there you go. Next time you
there.
need to ask them. So and they're not. Is there like a barrel number on that, or is it? Is it okay? So it's. There's only going to be so many batches.
They put all that stuff
right?
on there.
So that's you're not going to get more than 200 bottles out of any one barrel.
Well, not at that age. Yeah.
Yeah, if that. So.
All right. Anyway, on that note, anything else you want to?
No, it's been a wonderful time this week. We had so much to talk about, and and some nice bourbons to sample. So always grateful.
All right. Well, I'll do our closing, and we'll send our friends on their way. So that about does it for this week. I hope you have enjoyed this edition of the Bourbon Obsessed Bourbon Podcast. Be sure to like and follow us at your preferred podcast provider so that you don't miss an episode. You can also head over to bourbonobsessed.com to read the print version of my newsletter, where you can find links to press releases and full versions of the news stories mentioned in this podcast. You can also sign up to have my newsletter delivered directly to your inbox. While you're on my website, check out some of our over 300 bourbon reviews and over 50 distillery write-ups. Finally, I can also be found on Instagram at bourbon_obsessed and on Facebook at bourbon obsessed. Have a great week.
Thanks, Ed. Been a pleasure being with you. Dean of Bourbon on Instagram. That's the only place you can find me. See you all next time.
Thanks, Dean. Cheers.